Hello and welcome to the Daily Climate Show. Coming up today, new plans to channel water company pollution fines directly to the environment rather than the Treasury. The boss of British gas owner Centrica tells Sky News he wants more government help to create the world's largest green storage company. And the Woodland Trust calls for the planting of more resilient trees as it reveals storms took down 30,000 acres last winter. Hello and welcome to the Daily Climate Show, where we track the changes to our world and interrogate some of the potential solutions to the climate crisis. Now, the government has announced plans to use fines handed out to water companies for polluting seas and rivers to directly help improve the natural environment. It follows a number of cases during the summer when untreated sewage was discharged directly into the sea. Money from fines imposed by Ofwat or handed out following Environment Agency prosecutions is currently returned to the Treasury. The Water Minister has told us the new policy will make a really big difference.
It's well over 100 million since 2015 has been taken in these kind of fines. So it's significant money, which will make a really big difference when it's used out in the environment. This is just one measure in a huge raft of measures that we are taking to tackle water quality. And quite clearly, water companies know that the writing's on the wall and that pollution incidents are totally unacceptable.
Let's bring in our political correspondent, Ali Fortescue now. So, Ali, they say a really big difference.
Well, look, I think this is something that the Conservatives have definitely been under a lot of pressure on. Earlier this year, we had the Parliamentary Environment Audit Committee. They talked about chronic underinvestment that they blamed for the country's dirty waters. They said that pollution caused by sewage, single-use plastics, agriculture was leading to what they called a chemical cocktail that was making our rivers very dirty indeed. And that is something that at the time, Rebecca Powell, who you just heard from, the minister, said that she welcomed. She said it highlighted the work that the government is doing to try to fix that. But there is still pressure. This is still something that's coming up on the doorstep. And pressure, too, on the fact that legally binding targets that were due to be set, there's been a delay to that happening. And that is something that Therese Coffey, the Environment Secretary, said is disappointing. Here's what Rebecca Powell had to say about that delay.
We shouldn't have missed those targets, but we're working across the board at pace to get them out. But what we do need to make sure is that they're the right targets. So a huge amount of work has gone on behind the scenes with consultation, with stakeholder workshops, working with all the parties that will have to actually carry out reaching these targets. So we need to make sure they're right. We're virtually there, and they're going to be announced very, very soon.
And when it comes to fines for pollution incidents that we've been hearing about, I think there's no doubt that that will be a significant amount of money, potentially. The Environment Agency since 2015 have retrieved a total of £141 million worth of fines. So that money now not going to the Treasury, but instead going to projects to help clean up our waters is going to be a positive thing. But that doesn't mean that pressure's going away. This is something that's come up again and again. It came up when I was in Chester a couple of days ago ahead of the by-election there tomorrow. The Lib Dems say that this is a pathetic attempt to save face, but I think what we're seeing is the government trying to squarely put the blame at the doorstep of water companies, but they know it's something they need to get to grips with.
OK, Ali, thank you. Well, also making climate news today, more than 30,000 acres of woodland were damaged across Britain by storms last winter. That's according to data collected by the Forestry Commission. It says that more than 90% of trees which fall are replanted, but it is calling for landowners and forestry managers to plant more diverse and resilient tree species that can better withstand the extreme weather brought about by climate change, along with new pests and diseases. Just Stop Oil protesters have issued a call for the England captain Harry Kane to wear an armband carrying their message at the World Cup. The group has also threatened to escalate its campaign of direct action. Previously, they've thrown soup and paint at famous works of art, which are protected by glass screens, but now they say they'll consider slashing masterpieces in an echo of action taken by the suffragettes. German companies have signed a 15-year deal to buy liquid gas from Qatar as the country looks to wean itself off its dependence on Russian gas. But the arrangement raises questions over Germany's commitment to a carbon-neutral energy supply. It also comes despite high-profile protests against Qatar's human rights record by the German football team and ministers during the World Cup. Now, the UK has started to draw gas from a recently reopened huge gas storage facility under the North Sea as cold winter weather sees an increase in demand for heating. But the chief executive of British gas owner Centrica has told Sky News that what is really needed is more government help to convert the storage from natural gas to hydrogen, creating the world's largest green storage facility. Our business correspondent Paul Kelso has been speaking to Chris O'Shea at the Easington gas terminal in Yorkshire.
So today, Paul, we're standing in the Easington gas terminal. This terminal can process 20% of the UK's gas demands. But the brilliant thing is if you go out this way, 20 miles out to sea, is the Rough storage facility. That's the UK's largest storage facility. It stopped operating as storage in 2017 and we restarted it earlier this year. Today is monumental because this is the first day that we've been withdrawing gas from the facility to put into the system. So as you can see, there's not much wind today, it's quite cold, and so there's a higher demand for gas, and Rough's working exactly as it should.
You were asked to open this up by government. Was it a mistake with hindsight to have shut it down?
So in 2017, we found some issues with some of the wells offshore, some safety issues, and we looked at the cost of refurbishing the entire facility, and the cost of that was prohibitive based on what the market said at the time. And so we're operating at this reduced capacity. What we'd really like to do is to get the right regulatory framework with government so that we can bring this fantastic world-class facility back to full capacity, not only to store natural gas, but also to store hydrogen. Hydrogen is the key to the UK's decarbonisation. But in order to have people adopt or to have people start to use hydrogen, you've got to have a place to store it. Rough could become the world's largest hydrogen storage facility.
Well, let's speak to Paul. He joins us now. And Paul, how feasible would it be to change this storage facility?
Well, you can do anything with money, but the first hurdle that you have to get over, as Chris O'Shea referred to there, is the financing of any kind of development or expansion of the Rough storage field. To be clear, it's a storage facility. What it means, it was a gas field. It's sandstone buried 3 kilometres down underneath salt rock. So it's sealed. It's a wonderful feat of geology, entirely accidentally, that produced lots of methane gas, which has long been burnt and now can store methane gas that's pumped back into it. It's about 20% of its capacity. To get it up to 100% of capacity for natural gas would take about £1 billion. To convert it for hydrogen storage would cost Centrica estimate, and these are very rough figures, about £2 billion. You need to replace all the steel in the wells that go down into the ground to pump the, as it would be, hydrogen in and out. The steel that's being used at the moment is of not sufficient grade for hydrogen. It's a much smaller molecule than methane. That's the issue. You'd probably have to raise and start again with a new terminal at Easington, where I was talking to Chris O'Shea. And what Centrica want is a funding agreement with the government, similar to that which is provided for building a nuclear power station, or actually is used for the interconnectors that connect the UK to the gas grid in Europe, whereby you would set a cap and a floor, as it's known. So there will be an upper price on the energy that Centrica is able to sell from the Rough facility, hydrogen in future, methane down the line, and a floor on how low the price could go. So if the price of gas dropped, hard to imagine, but if it did, the government would reimburse Centrica for that money. And if it went above a certain level, all that excess profit, as we are seeing at the moment, would go back to the government. And that would give a financial climate in which Centrica say they could invest because they know they would get a return on the money. The government, there was some conversations about this. They're stalled at the moment. It hasn't gone away, but it's going to require that kind of long-term thinking and probably some kind of taxpayer involvement, underwriting of these projects, as it is across the energy transition, to get something as ambitious as a huge hydrogen storage facility off the ground. The aim, though, as Chris O'Shea told me, is to produce energy security and an energy transition, because the situation we're in today, he told me, we're seeing fossil fuels being burnt just to keep the lights on.
Every winter you've got a worry, which is what will the weather be like. So today it's cold and it's not very windy. The cold means that people need more gas to heat their homes. And the fact there's no wind means we need more gas to generate electricity. Now, National Grid and the government have worked a backup whereby they've got coal-fired power stations that are on standby. Actually, they're operating today. Nobody wants to be burning coal, but we've got to make sure that the lights stay on.
That corner of Humberside where I was talking to Chris O'Shea is remarkable. Not only have you got Easington there with 20% of the UK's gas storage, you've got the pipeline from Norway, 1,400 kilometres long, makes landfall next door. That provides about 30% of the UK's gas. But that area, if you add in Teesside, produces close to 50% of the UK's CO2 emissions because of all the heavy industry. What Chris O'Shea was talking about there is moving towards greening that industry. There's a Norwegian carbon capture pipeline being worked on at the moment that could perhaps bury lots of that CO2 emission. So if the energy transition is to happen, we will see it not just in improvements in the way energy is provided, but we could see it in a big reduction, a necessary reduction if the UK is going to have any chance of hitting its net zero targets in the emissions from that very industrial but crucial corner of the UK.
Paul, thank you. And Tom Heap will be looking at the issue of hydrogen power for his climate show this week. And you can watch it here on Sky News at 3:30 in the afternoon or at 7:30 in the evening on Saturday and Sunday. And if you have any questions about climate change that you want answered, send them all to us using this QR code, and we will try to answer as many as we can on Tom's show.